HR managers of Reddit. What is the craziest backstabbing tattletale you've heard from an employee about another employee? Not an our manager, but a manager at the place I work at accused an employee of smoking weed at work. Management decided to call the entire department in for drug tests. Manager got fired for cannabis in his bloodstream. It's not crazy or backstabbing, but when I worked for FedEx I had to go to the HR department with my trainer because he reported me for being too sarcastic and drinks too much water. Yeah, one of my I am also female bosses complained that I drank too much water and peed too often. She was a B. Co-worker named Andy once ratted me out to our boss because her name in my contacts was annoying Andy do not answer. How did she know? She went through my phone while I was in the bathroom. Boss thought it was hilarious. Was still laughing when she told Andy if she touched my crap again she pack hers and walk out the door. That boss was actually kind of a psycho B, but we got along really well. Whoa, that backfired spectacularly. D. I had a department head in maintenance who asked me to stop her employee from smiling. It was a union shop and he decided employees could no longer read on their breaks, not lunch or coffee breaks. This employee started having a newspaper hanging out of his back pocket. My boss told me to have him stop doing that. I refused and told him what person had in his pocket was not under our control. Then when this same employee started smiling at him whenever he saw him, he blew up. Ordered me to tell him to stop smiling at him. I asked him if he was nuts. You want me to go out there and tell him to look sad every time he sees you so you'll feel better? Told my boss he needed to talk to HR about this request. Eventually the company fired him after I got promoted to another factory and the next guy reported his shenanigans. I wonder what his story was and what he is doing right now. Keep smiling at BS, man. That's how you get through this life. A woman I work with complained that me and another co-worker are friends. This co-worker is a few positions above me, but we both started at the same time at the same level, and that is when we became friends. The woman who complained, her cousin got her the job. He's essentially one of her direct supervisors. I was doing an exit interview with a female marketing person. As the interview came to an end she stood up and said, "Oh, and by the way, John McDoucherface has been sexually harassing me for weeks." I thought I would mention that. I stopped her before she could walk out of my office because, even though she said it so nonchalantly as she was walking out of the exit interview, the other guy still worked there. I, and the company, would have to take it seriously and investigate. While I was pulling more details out of her, she said that he was sending her texts on her company phone. When I asked if she had turned the phone in yet, she told me it was in her purse. I asked her to hand over the phone, and she initially refused. After I reminded her it was company property, she relented. This is where things got really shady. I looked through the first 100 texts between them, and it was definitely inappropriate material on both sides. I had to contact our cell service company and get a full dump of the messages. What we ended up printing out was a 300+ page transcript of messages between the two of them. McDoucherface was way the frick out of line, for sure, but we ended up piecing together the whole story just from the text messages. McDoucherface and Shady Girl started dating not long after she started. They exchanged loads of dirty text messages and loads of racist remarks about other employees between the two of them over the course of a few months. He dumped her and then proceeded to try and keep a friends with benefits relationship with her by constantly asking her to just come over and frick when he couldn't find any better prospects. They went back and forth for several weeks until she found another job, and that was when she backed away from him. Now, he definitely got what was coming to him, but she admitted to us that she only waited to tell us when she was on the way out the door was because she knew we would find out the stuff she was saying doing as well, which would have meant she would have been fired for making racist comments about other employees. I honestly can't say whether she would have been fired or reprimanded had she told us sooner due to how awful his side looked, but I was glad her leaving meant we could get rid of two awful people. Whoa, that's a whole lot of bad decisions. Some equipment went missing from our storage cabinet. It wasn't too expensive or irreplaceable, but still it had to be investigated. I work in a pretty small office, so the number of people that could be involved was fairly limited. So I talked to a couple of managers and employees. I try to keep it low key. Then out of nowhere a wild douche appears and goes to my boss and accuses me of stealing the equipment. Which of course I didn't do. It happened to be someone that I had hired as a favor to a friend that referred him to me. So I had bent over backwards getting him an easy job and good pay, and this is how he returned the favor. So I talked to my boss and I asked if I could fire him and he said yes. So I fired him. He stormed out shouting to everyone in the office that he had done nothing wrong. It seemed like he interpreted it as me firing him for stealing, which just wasn't the case. I fired him for backstabbing me. I had a co-worker who was consistently late by 15 to 30 minutes coming into the office. He lived less than a block away from me, so I knew which bus he took to get to work, same one as me. One time, I was 2 minutes late and he happened to be on time. He ranted and raved about that. I was running HR for a small company that ran a ADT, adult training meant for individuals with intellectual disabilities. I had 2 female employees who hated each other, and for the sake of confusion I'll call them Kim and Lucy. Now, Kim was well liked by staff and participants while Lucy had a tendency to become hostile if she were asked to do anything by others. These two would often clash, but never anything that requires my intervention. One day I am the only administrator in the office and Lucy comes over complaining she was reviewing medical records and realized that Kim missed distributing a bunch of scheduled medications to the participants. Being that our folks were on a lot of needed anticonvulsants, this was a huge problem, so I go and check it out in the record. According to the logbook and bubble packs, Kim missed almost a week's worth of a guy's anticonvulsants. I call the guy's doctor who said he should be okay, so there wasn't anything to be worried about as long as he didn't push himself too hard physically. I call Kim into the office who says she didn't touch the meds and wanted me to check the cameras that we had monitoring the med room. As I am going through the footage I find that Kim was right and Lucy actually went in every day with the non-verbal participant, pop the med, would drop it down the sink and then give the man a cup of water. Lucy is lying dead to rights. Call Lucy and prepared to fire her, and of course she denies it until I show her the camera footage. I then ask why she did it and she told me it was because Kim never offered to bring her in coffee in the morning. This lady could have killed a man because a co-worker didn't ask her if she wanted coffee. Late, but whatever. I was a general manager of a pizza joint. One of my 20YO shift managers came to me crying about a 35YO driver that had broken his bowl, the weed kind, and flushed his weed down the toilet. Said he had taken it out of his pocket in the back of the store so he could shake the flour out of his pockets. When I asked the driver, he said it was because when he went to take a pee he found the manager in the bathroom smoking said stash. When I check the bathroom there is bowl ash all over the floor between the toilet and the wall. I fired the manager for being a lying Winnie B. 2 employees are in a relationship, and yes, I use that word loosely. One party thinks it's the real deal while the other person view the relationship as much more casual. There is constant drama over the years where they break up and argue and then they're suddenly going to lunch together again. I've had to speak with them before about professional conduct in the workplace due to this. Most recently she finds out that he's sleeping with someone else. She storms into my office, slams the door and just starts laying out all the crap he's been up to over the years. He's still in a gang. He's using drugs. He's abusive, and all this. I had to explain to her that while I was sympathetic to what was going on, I couldn't do anything based off of her accusations, especially since she was so angry. I'm going to get him fired is her retort. I tell her to go home and come back the next day with some clarity because I didn't want to have to write her up or fire her for harassing him. They're back together now. Just saw them out to lunch last week. It's unbelievable. Up until the second paragraph it sounded like Ryan and Kelly LeMayo. I legit thought this was an office reference. One of my workers called me and asked if he could be released early from his shift because he desperately needed to go home and do something for his mum. I told him not unless it was slow and the shift lead said it was okay. That was fairly standard. Turns out, he lied to the shift lead and told her I said it was okay for him to go home regardless of how busy it was, and he just up and left. My shift lead didn't call me to tell me this because she didn't want to get him in trouble. When I found out what really happened, I tore him a new one and threatened to fire him and wrote him up. He'd left the poor girl alone on a busy day without backup and lied about it. When I called him out on it, his response was to say, well, she wasn't wearing her uniform. Doesn't she get in trouble for that? No you fuckwit. Our uniform is a shirt. I don't give two invaluable fricks about what she was wearing. At least she was there. I got hauled into HR because we were incredibly busy. End of the tax year, and at the same time we dropped a load of new mortgage rates, so we were dealing with people wanting to discuss their investments and a ton of mortgage appointments. One manager was really kicking off about losing customers as we weren't working quick enough. For the record, we have always been told to take our time and make sure the customer is neither missold a product and is confident in our information. That comes from the top. Anyway, he pulled us into a meeting room to shout at us. Me, being an eternal gobshite, responded by saying, well, this just wasted 10 minutes of our time and customer appointment time, and if it's so bad, why don't you take mortgage appointments as you are a qualified mortgage advisor? A day later, I'm in a meeting with the HR manager for undermining his position. She didn't even make any notes on the matter. I got the feeling she massively disliked the guy. Anyway, he got fired about 6 months later for hiring 2 women who were underqualified but are now knocking it out of the ballpark. Anyway, he hired them because they are attractive. He gave them both personal phones and was sending them dong pics and lewd messages over a weekend. On the Monday they went to HR and he was marched out that very same day. Lucky they ended up good employees too. At least there's a happy ending. Not for him. Not HR, but a few weeks ago a co-worker got in trouble. To throw attention off of her, she fed some BS story to HR about my manager forcing me to work off the clock. I'm fortunate that my manager doesn't do that crap, so I had to go in and talk to HR and defend my boss and strangely myself. She doesn't know I know what she did and still thinks we're friends. I am working as a HR manager in Dubai. One fine morning, our company's top asset walks in with his RR papers. When I inquired him about the reason for his RR resignation request, he said it is increasingly getting awkward to work along with a female co-worker. We were ready to give him a better PS and incentives, but he still refused. Then he mentioned the reason for his RR off the record. He said, she has a crush on me. I said, well, that's not awkward. He said, well, the awkward part is I banged her mom and sister. Well, he found a better job. Declined the hat trick, man. Not a manager, but I do work in HR for the government. Out of nowhere, one employee wrote a lengthy 5-page resignation letter that completely threw her supervisor under the bus and defamed her character. This letter managed to make its way to the secretary's office, as in presidential cabinet member, and numerous employee relations meetings ensued. Oh dear God. I was a manager and a regular complaint from one older woman was that no one emptied the garbage can at her workstation. This went on for a while. I finally got fed up and went to see for myself and was going to take care of it if needed. Turned out it was a decorative pot for plants just outside her area, which she used as a garbage can instead of the one inside her cubicle. So it turned out that she was getting perhaps either a tad blind or maybe senile. I had one employee double check all her recent work and it turned out to be a mix of both. We decided to get her family involved. That'd have to have been an odd conversation. My mom worked as a receptionist at an office when she was younger. Someone ordered a pizza who was a good friend of my mom's, so when the pizza came she took a pepperoni off, and a different person who was in no way affiliated saw this and reported her to HR. My mom got some BS warning even though the pizza's owner didn't care and said he was going to offer her a slice anyway, given that they were close friends. I was a lifeguard one summer and a bunch of the other lifeguards, myself included, would bring in food for everyone. One guy brought in a 12-pack of Squirt. I helped myself to one. I got chewed out for stealing and had to buy the guy a can of soda. So I packed up my Otter Pops and other stuff, took it home and changed my availability so I could only work once a week or something. Bull crap. I was reported by my mentor for drawing a small smiley face in my notebook on the first page. Of course there is nothing wrong with this, so I kept doing it. After several more complaints, my boss was forced to escalate the issue and give me counseling. In the end, my mentor just looked stupid as frick. She also made less than me. I understood why after that. Somewhere out there exists a document saying I was reprimanded for doodling. I would request a copy of it and frame it. Honestly, that's gold. Had an employee come to me saying he was very uncomfortable because one of the female employees kept showing him nudes on her cell phone, acting like they were something else. For example, look at my new puppy. Oops shucks that's just my boobs lol. She was also shamelessly flirting with him. I question the other male employees in the department and find out she has been doing it to all of them. Only one of them actually looked at her nudes on purpose. He is in his 50s, married, and has twin daughters. He told me he liked it so he didn't think she should get in trouble. I tell the main boss this is sexual harassment and she should be fired. If a man showed dong pics to female employees he would be out immediately. Instead he gives her a verbal warning and she worked for a few more months until her husband made her quit. For informational purposes this girl is 18 and married to a very jealous 40-year-old. She has one child with him and he has 3 total. Dang, that husband is in for a world of trouble. Not an hour manager, but when I worked at a movie theater, one of the concession workers told on another one for stealing candy every night, mostly Twizzlers. The one stealing Twizzlers proceeded to inform everyone else that the Tattle-Tale regularly blew one of the managers for better shifts. Guess who got fired? This isn't as obvious as you thought. You need to say who it was that got fired. This happened to me. I had a co-worker who was overall hated for being an arc. Telling people what to do, just generally being insufferable, but also started to really slack on their job. Things like showing up late, not doing basic duties. Myself and this other woman were really working our asses off for a couple of weeks on some deadlines. Found out she went to our boss and told her that myself and the other co-worker were slacking. Even accused us of literally sleeping on the job. I was floored because at that point I had kept all my feedback to myself, even covered up for her just to not cause trouble. After that I gave up and stopped covering for her. She was promptly let go about 6 weeks later when it became abundantly clear that she was slacking. Still shocked because if she had kept her mouth shut she probably would have stayed, because overall she had a sweet deal because myself and many others just minded our own business. I'm not in HR but I do know something that fits. I used to volunteer at a hospital and there was this one employee for transportation that was always late. 10-20 minutes all the time. She even had some people key in for her, which was a huge no-no, and if caught both employees are suspended or fired depending on the mood. She was always getting chewed by he, but they never caught her for the swiping thing, so she always had to stay longer to make up for time she wasn't on the clock. She started dating one of the maintenance guys. He was nice. Everyone loved him. She was a B but had a 9/10 body, and maintenance has to be on time. Suddenly she was always there 15 minutes before shift started. She even started chewing other people out. Even the volunteers, to which I pointed out I could pee in a potted plant and they'd beg for the free employee to come back, so when I get here to give them free money don't matter. She got crazy high and mighty. Started saying if I can do it so can you. One day I go in and half of the staff in my area are gone. Transport is down to 4 people from 9. Bulk store is at 8 from 20. Kitchen is at 15 from 24, and so on. Turns out 6 months ago she got the security to upgrade to time swipe thing to one that logs data. Used her boyfriend's keys to access the data once she found out HR couldn't give a crap, and compiled 3 months of people keying in for others even just once. You swipe your card. You can pin anyone in out if you know their ID and passcode. The old one didn't register who swiped the card. She gave that to HR and subsequently got fired, but since her email went out to almost all management they had to suspend and fire over 130 employees across multiple departments, so for a whole week they were short-staffed. About 80 people came back as they were only suspended. Now instead of it to brute people they call you Janice. Jokingly, if you betrayed them, jokingly as in stealing a pen. Holy crap. Small amounts of power make some people go nuts. I have a girl I work with that every time the schedule is put out, if she thinks, in her crazy butt way, that I got any kind of preference, like Sunday off, even though she knows I hate Sundays off, she comes unglued and sends me nasty texts, and deletes me from Facebook like I care, but will then get nasty again if I don't add her back right away when he wants me to. She is friends with our assistant chief, so whenever she isn't getting her way with the supervisor, she runs straight to him to get her way. I love my job, and the benefits are way too good to quit, but I'm just ready to beat her with a baseball bat. I was looking through some old HR files once, and found a complaint about someone being accused witchcraft. Wasn't expecting that one. That's awesome. LOL, I was accused of witchcraft by a Pentecostal Christian that lived in my college dorm. He told the hall director that my satanic activities were going to bring the wrath of God upon the dorm, possibly even cause the dorm to be destroyed by some disaster like a fire. A paralegal I used to work for reported me to HR for having a magneted mirror on my file cabinet. She claimed I used it to spy on her and to see when she was coming so I could fake like I was working, like I wasn't working all the time with her and 2 litigation partners to work for. My brother had a girl, whom he says is a lesbian, take a photograph of his pants crotch, because she could see his bulge, and she then emailed it to the manager because it offended her. The manager sat him down and just told him that it happened and there would be no repercussions. All I could think was, what if I just took a photo of a girl's cleavage or camel toe and emailed that to my manager? There dang well should be repercussions for that, in that taking pictures of someone's crotch is not appropriate workplace behavior. Well, I used to be a manager of a package distribution facility. Because I wasn't a union worker, there were rules I had to follow, otherwise I'd be taking work away from employees. One of those rules was to not touch packages. A rule that I would have loved to have followed, but impossible for me to do so seeing as my job was very hands-on. Sometimes people loading trucks would fall behind and need help catching up before the trucks left. Sometimes I could find some employees to delegate to my area, but most of the time everyone is busy during the morning rush, which leaves me as the only option. This would happen almost daily. I was lucky to have workers who understood the situation and tight schedule I was in. However, when truck drivers started arriving, there was always this one dude who'd file grievances against me. He'd never confront me. He never helped the loaders. He would just wait for his shift to start, and if he saw me handing off a package to one of my workers, it was just a bonus to him. Super petty. Glad I'm not in that stressful backstabbing heckhole now. Miss my workers though, they were cool people. I once had a stupid bee of a nurse on the night shift at one of my group homes. She was rude. She liked to throw her authority around the direct care staff, do petty crap to undermine the program, call out in excess of policy, and gave new staff a lecture on how the rules of the program don't matter, and on her shift her rules applied. We had new staff transfer out, multiple complaints verbally, but nobody was willing to put anything in writing, which left my hands tied. One day, finally, someone put a complaint in writing about how she was screaming at staff in front of the residents, and litany of other complaints in line with what we knew she was doing, but could not prove. Later on that day, an anonymous abuse report was filed with the DPPC against the complainant, alleging they hit a resident 2 weeks prior. All parties involved knew the claim was highly dubious. Why wait 2 weeks to report abuse? The notes from that date don't indicate anything about circumstances of the claim. Client having behavior issue irritated staff leading to abuse. Yet client is noted as having great day behavior wise. A staff had just that day been reprimanded and the claim is anonymous. But of course, an investigation is required by law. The staff was temporarily reassigned to another program for over a month. As far as I know, that Fat C still works there. Had an employee I will refer to as Shitsnack, mostly because I like to believe that he is capable of literally eating crap. He had a long list of stuff that eventually got him fired. His biggest problem was that the instant he got in trouble, he would list a million things co-workers did wrong. In his head, if someone else was getting away with something, he should not be punished either, even if it wasn't even related. The employee didn't do what Shitsnack said, or the other employee had gotten in trouble for it. I remember when he got fired, we had a new manager. Shitsnack tried to accuse me of being soft on an ex-employee because we were friends. He was an ex-employee because I fired him. He then said he was going to sue us for discrimination. My manager said that he was free to do so, but by looking at his records, Shitsnack should have been fired a long time ago. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.